Material Differences. Chapter 14, Part 1. Banter in the Sky. The lifter was about as quiet as it could possibly get with the engines running. Ham had left the music off and no one was talking. The flight back from Circuit Mountain had been uneventful so far, but mostly because no one really wanted to talk. Yeager still wasn't sure just how to address the things Tanya had gone through. Tanya obviously just wanted time to sit and brood in silence. And Ham couldn't hold back any longer. I didn't even know you were into girls. Ham, Yeager sighed and shook his head. What? We're almost to the Port Authority building! He waved out the window at the ruins of the city that they were quickly approaching. I've been good this far. I've just got to ask. Not really, Tanya said haltingly with a heavy sigh. I don't know. My memory is pretty shoddy of my visits. When I first saw her, I was just so surprised. She wasn't this perfect supermodel-type woman. She had this very surprised and nervous expression. She seemed innocent and scared. Things just Well, if you don't like girls like that, why go back? Ham asked next. She seemed sweet, I guess, and I felt like I was so close to remembering how to convince her to give up the hive. Plus, she was so small, what threat could she possibly pose to me? Tanya shrugged and then shook her head. I don't know. Like Yeager said, I was really drunk. Who knows what I was really thinking? But I think she loved me. I kept telling her I'd kill her and she just kept letting me back in. Kept trying to convert me while I tried to convert her. I don't think I cared for her like that. But I liked that she liked me. She said it more like a question, as she obviously had trouble truly understanding her own emotions. And so you slept with the enemy? Ham asked. I assure you we didn't sleep. Tanya shot back reflexively and then groaned. Why did I even say it like that? Conditioning, Yeager replied. That's always been our comeback whenever we teased each other about booty calls on R&R and the like. As he said that, she nodded a bit, remembering all the times they did indeed use that as their go-to reply. Well, whatever, I just felt some measure of peace when I was with her. She was so loving. I hadn't felt that in so long. The things she said about joining her in the hive, it was tempting like I'd never thought before. She promised me all the love, care, and peace I could dream of. And after all the drinking, it sounded very nice, Tanya continued. A collective regime of peace and love, Yeager mentioned their old slogan. There's a reason it gains so many followers and still gets converts. You're not the first to be drawn in, and you won't be the last, he said to try and help comfort her. Okay, well then if you liked this booty call so much, why kill her? Ham asked. She wasn't a booty call, Tanya growled out. Don't mind him. He doesn't understand dating or sex since no woman wants to date a guy named after food. Yeager dismissed. You're such an asshole, Ham muttered in return. You were all the assholes who'd introduce me like that whenever I made the mistake of joining you shitbirds on leave. And I still got laid even after being introduced as Ham, but it might shock you to know most of the time I just used my real name. The pilot scoffed then and shook his head. No one spoke for a bit as Tanya and Yeager both looked at the pilot, who finally realized they were staying quiet. Do you not remember my name? I stopped using your name the moment you called yourself Ham, Yeager confessed. I still have a real name. How could you forget? I thought we were friends, Ham gasped out. Because that was... Yeager trailed off and thought for a moment. 20 years ago. Why would I remember your name that I never used after 20 years of Ham? And that's what makes us friends. An acquaintance would remember your name. But a friend is like, he's Ham. Yeager nodded sagely. To be perfectly honest, I don't remember either, Tanya confessed as well. Ham looked between the two of them, giving them a hurt expression. It's Juan Garcia, he finally told them. Ooh, that's right. Yeager snapped his fingers as a few memories came rushing back. You're the John Smith of Mexicans. I'm not Mexican, Ham hissed out. Why does everyone immediately assume Mexican when I tell them my name? First of all, do you know how many nations back on Earth even spoke Spanish? At least one. Mexico, Yeager answered. At least one? Seriously? What about Spain? The country the language is named after, Ham huffed. Regardless. Second, My family was on one of the first colony ships to settle the void. I'm as void gets, he insisted. I suppose you have a point, Jaeger nodded slowly. It was wrong of us to call you Ham all these years. Really, we should have called you Jamin. He snickered after saying that, and even Tanya chuckled a little. I swear, I'll just nosedive this lifter straight into the ground, Ham muttered darkly. Some Juan woke up on the wrong side of bed today. Jaeger followed up and snickered once more. Oh my God, how is it you using my real name for the first time in 20 years is somehow worse than being called Ham? Ham sighed and shook his head. It's settled then. We'll call you Ham from now on, but it's now short for Jamin. Jaeger nodded at the decision, while Ham groaned and sighed. Then they were quiet for a bit again. What we're talking about? Before you reminded me that all my friends are assholes, that is, Ham said. You'd asked me why I killed a person who loved me, referring to her as a booty call, Tanya reminded him. Well, why'd you do it? Ham asked, doubling down rather than getting embarrassed. Tanya glared at him long enough for him to glance back and see. What? We were just talking about this the other day. He waved at Jaeger. We're terrible people. We really are. Jaeger nodded in agreement. So don't expect me to feel too much shame. I think I had most of mine removed when I became a synth, and Jaeger here was just naturally born an insensitive asshole. He pointed at Jaeger, who just kept nodding. That's true, he agreed once more. So just be thankful I didn't start playing that old shot through the heart song. When he mentioned that Jaeger and Tanya just gave him confused looks. No? Shot through the heart. And you're to blame. You give love a bad name? Wow, if you did that she might legitimately have shot you. Jaeger snorted. I still might, Tanya grumbled. No one spoke for a minute until Ham once more broke the silence. So why'd you do it? He refused to let up. Because she's the fucking enemy! What do you expect me to say? Tanya cried out in an annoyed tone. She was still a bishop, and I couldn't convince her to leave the hive. Despite what you might think, it wasn't a sexual thing at all. It was the caring, the companionship, the relationship with someone real and not a bartender. It was getting harder to leave, and I inspired her in ways that just made them more dangerous. Not less. Tanya let out a deep sigh then and just closed her eyes. I don't want to pry, but did you have something to do with those hub rats? Jaeger asked, too curious to refrain from asking. I really don't know. Tanya shook her head. Her speeches made it sound like I did. But what do I know about genetics? All I can imagine is that since everyone knew me as Tunnel Rat, that my name alone gave her the idea? She suggested with a shrug. Maybe I somehow had something to do with the wireless rigs for the handlers and that made them actually work? I just don't know. The whole thing. I keep trying to help people, and instead I make it all worse. Hey, knock it off. Jaeger wanted Tanya to feel better, and he knew she just needed time, but he also wanted to keep on her about that sort of behavior. You're going to get sober, right? You'll spend the next few days just drying out, and Max will take you back to the compound so you can get fixed up. You're getting control of your life back, and if you control your life, that means you can make it better. He looked back at her and saw her nod slowly. Right? He insisted. Right, she agreed then before rubbing her face slowly. He knew that, unlike a real person who might go into shock, or all kinds of terrible effects of going dry after a decade of drinking, that her synth body could recover much more easily. But he wasn't sure how bad it might still get for her on a psychological level. Actually, you can help us figure something out with Max, Ham suggested then, and Jaeger frowned at the pilot, unsure where he was going with this. See, we're trying to determine if he's a moody brooder like you or an action hero type. Yes, we are. Jaeger nodded slowly as he realized where Ham was going with this. I mentioned to you earlier about the hard-boiled shows he likes to watch. For some strange reason. Because he looks up to you, and he thinks watching those shows will somehow help him understand how to connect with you. Tanya cut in, which made Jaeger blink in surprise. I thought about it before when you mentioned it. He probably thinks you're like the protagonists in those shows, she explained. Me? Hard-boiled? Jaeger asked incredulously. Have you met me? Do I seem hard-boiled? No. At best you're half-baked. Tanya replied deadpan, which caught Jaeger off guard. Ha! Ooh, she got you! Ham gasped with a laugh. Damn, she got you good. He played it up a little further than normal, too, obviously encouraging Tanya, probably to help cheer her up and build up her confidence in their usual back-and-forth mocking, though it might also be to get them to lay off mocking him for a change. That she did. Jaeger nodded slowly and noticed her wry smile. Despite all she's gone through, he knew she'd be okay. Their healing process was just different than normal people. A psychologist would likely refer to it as deeply broken and possibly psychopathic or sociopathic. Jaeger couldn't remember which one was which. Maybe both? Probably both. Anyway, we were hoping you'd let us know if he offers you dark makeup and takes you to his favorite brooding point. Resist the siren call of the emo music and pity party, Ham cut in. Bite me, shithead, Tanya hissed back, but Ham just grinned. Or if he instead asks for your advice on cool names and one-liners. Jaeger kept going as if they hadn't interrupted him. One-liners? Tanya asked with a bit of confusion. Yeah, when we were being chased by scav bikes, he shot one which made two crash into an old storefront, and he said they must be having a 2-for-1 sale. As soon as he mentioned that, Tanya snorted. See? But based on the stuff he watches and the feelings he expressed, it could go either way. I'm sure he won't be either. Max is a smart young man. He'll probably be well-adjusted, Tanya tried to argue. But he's Jaeger's kid, so there's a strong possibility he's just screwed from the start, Ham countered. Yeah, I hate to admit it, but I'm kinda with Ham on this one, Jaeger revealed. The deck is stacked against him being any sort of well-adjusted or normal. You can't seriously believe that, Tanya gasped out. I know we had our falling out with my behavior when I was staying with you, but I've seen enough of Raven and Max to know they're both wonderful, kind kids. Raven, sure, Jaeger nodded. But I need Max to be combat capable, so I've been pushing him more in that direction. I mean, he's half Leona, so he's got that going for him, but since I'm the parent who survived, I'm sure I've done all kinds of long-term psychological damage already. My hope is that he's just not as colossally fucked in the head as I am. Jaeger was sure he'd messed up Max by now. He just hoped that his son could recover in time. Somehow. Maybe he should kidnap a shrink or something. I think you're both wrong, Tanya argued. I think Max isn't going to be broken, and that you're not nearly as bad as you think you are. So that's 2 votes for messed in the head, and 1 for mentally stable and well-adjusted individual? Ham asked. What are you taking odds on this? Tanya grumbled as she crossed her arms. To be honest, once we get Brandy Lynn back into the team, she might already have odds, Jaeger pointed out. I'm not sure if she'll let me bet, though, since I could skew the odds in my favor. So you bet on my behalf and I'll split the pot with you. He offered Ham. Easy money. Ham nodded. You two are terrible, Tanya sighed. Yeah, we already established that. There's the hideout. Jaeger then pointed up ahead as they could see their destination up ahead. The Port Authority building that was the supposed home for Jaeger's cover version of himself. Much like the compound, he'd invested plenty of time and resources to fix it up and make it into a capable home for them should they need it. Were anyone to actually try and check it out, they'd see a well-defended prospector hideout with reprogrammed absolute dynamics bots, but nothing out of the ordinary. All right, swearing lightning round before Raven gets on board, Jaeger said, and took a moment to shake himself out as he prepared to use up his last minutes of not having a child around. Twat waffle. Cunt nugget, Ham replied. Douche canoe. Poon guzzler. Spastic cock jockey. Finger-banging chicken diddler. What are you two doing? Tanya asked in between some of their cusses. Gotta get it out while I've got the chance, you bow-legged sperm-guzzling Uncle Fucker, Jaeger explained. Yeah, get with the program, you dick-infested man-mattress, Ham helpfully added on. Keef Nado, Jaeger kept at it. Keef Nado? Ham asked with a confused look at Jaeger. I already used that one, you chunky corn piece of shit. I mean, like, what in the sweet titty fucking Christ is a queef nado? Ham asked while catching up on his cussing. Isn't it obvious, you lady boy fucking dick holster? It's a tornado made out of queefs, Jaeger explained. Oh, is it, like, made from one queef out of a giant woman? Or like a storm of queefs from hundreds of them all at once? Why am I even questioning this? You rat-nosed knob-gobbler, Ham added at the end. What the hell is wrong with you sister-fucking hillbillies? Tanya asked. That's the spirit, you peppy little spooge vacuum, Jaeger grinned. Says the square-jawed cum-puppet. Tanya shot back, though by now they were all wildly grinning. Okay, we're landing. Cut it! Jaeger had to end things as they came down upon the roof of the Port Authority building. Max and Raven were waiting for them at the edge of the Vital pad. Once Ham set the gecko down, he kept the engine running while Jaeger and Tanya stepped off and walked towards them. He was leaving their combat gear from the raid on the hive in the gecko. Auntie Tanya! Raven quickly rushed up to give her a hug. It's great to see you too, little bird, Tanya replied and hugged Raven back for a moment. Hey, Tanya! Max nodded and extended a hand, but Tanya smirked, and after she finished hugging Raven, she just stepped up to hug Max as well. It's good to see you too, kid. She gave him a quick squeeze as he bashfully hugged back. Max was at the age where he probably thought hugs were a bit more childish than a good manly handshake, but Tanya obviously wasn't having any of that. Right, get her back to the compound so she can repair. Then make sure you finish that list of chores I gave you. Tanya, he's in charge of the list while I'm gone, Jaeger mentioned. Hear that? I'm in charge. Max wasted no time in trying to take command, as Tanya just gave him a look for a moment before focusing on Jaeger instead. Straight to work, HM? She asked as she crossed her arms. Work is good, and it's necessary. It's mostly just checking defenses and laying traps, things like that. He's already started working on it and knows how things have changed. That's all. Jaeger shrugged. Play nice, you two. We will, Max nodded. So long as she refers to me as my Lord and Majesty. Great. The moment you get a promotion, it goes straight to your head. Typical Boot. Slap a rocker stripe on that chevron and you think you're a god. Don't you dare try to eye me, Boot. Tanya growled out at Max, who just looked confused. Ha! If there are any disputes, take them to First Sergeant Plank, Jaeger mentioned, which made Tanya nod. Right. Good old First Sergeant Plank, veteran of all wars of all time. Is he still where we left him? She asked. Should be, Jaeger nodded. You two have fun, and Tanya, try not to skate him too hard. See you when we get back. With that, he turned to walk with Raven into the lifter as Max behind him was entirely confused. I didn't understand just about anything you said to me. And who's First Sergeant Plank? I've never heard of him, Jaeger heard Max saying as Tanya walked with him to the stairs off the roof. Jaeger, meanwhile, climbed aboard the gecko with Raven and made sure she got strapped in before he sat back down. Get me anything from Circuit Mountain? She asked as Ham got the lifter back into the air. Not this time, but I think you'll be spoiled rotten enough as it is on this trip, especially since I learned you two plotted against me. Jaeger scoffed and tossed his hands up as if it were a grand betrayal, which made Raven and Ham chuckle. It really wasn't planned, Raven said then. He just asked me if I'd like to see the newly reopened Vision building, which I do. I've read up on it. Sounds like fun. So I said yes, and he said he'd talk you into it. I'm just teasing, Jaeger shrugged. I hope you two do have fun checking out the museums and stuff, though.